Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome to I Care About You, the podcast where we navigate life's challenges with care, compassion, and love. I'm Juliana J., the host, and today I wanted to talk about something really close to my heart and that I've been going through, and possibly you are feeling a little of the same. So this podcast is going to be for all of us who've been laid off or experienced some sort of letting go. Somehow we've been let go from some space. Something's ended. And this podcast is for all of us who have experienced that either right now or at some point in our lives. If you know someone who could benefit from this podcast, please share it with them. This is really meant to be a solidarity piece. I am in solidarity with you and I support you as we go through this challenging time of our lives. And any support is so important when something like this happens to us. I also want to remind folks that my book, Reasons to Live, is really all about navigating dark times like this and others where you might feel like you have lost all your self-worth and you're really having a hard time identifying who you are and all the beautiful qualities that you have and you embody and that you are. So I'll put a link to that in the description below, but let's get into it. This week, I've had so many people who have really been struggling with a lot of things that are falling out in our society today. One of which is so many people are being laid off and it's coming from left field and it's really devastating. It's changing how they thought about themselves in the world, who they are as people, what they trusted, what their future was going to look like, what their retirement was going to look like. They're feeling like they're going to lose where they live, not be able to provide for themselves. They're worried about their families and each other. And it's really, really devastating. I feel like every day people are reaching out to me talking about being laid off out of the blue and just this overwhelming despair that they're feeling. I really share the concern of all these people that are reaching out because I too was laid off from my job back in October. I know a lot of people think when you have a podcast and you're on YouTube, you're making all this money and you're quite well off. And that's not really true. For me, this is part of my gift economy. I feel that we all need to really be there for one another, reach out to one another, provide each other support. I strongly, strongly believe that. And at this point in my career with my podcast and my YouTube channel, I'm not making anything off of that. That is just because I feel that we've lost a sense of our humanity and our connection to one another. And it's important that we show each other we're here for one another. So it's been hard. It's hard to look for jobs in this job market where there are so many jobs that aren't even real that are out there. It's challenging to be in that space again, especially when you were just blindsided by the layoff, which so many people have felt. I've seen a lot of older folks being laid off, which is extra challenging because they were very, very settled in their career and where they were working and where they were going. And now all of a sudden they're thrust into a job market feeling like, who's going to hire me? I'm not youthful and just starting out. And my salary expectations are not the same as someone who is just starting out in their career. It's hard. And for those starting out in their career, what about the folks who just graduated from college or high school? What's the next move there? It's really a scary, scary change that we're going through that is tinged with so much emotion, despair, sadness, anger, confusion. It just really spirals all this negative self-talk, right? I had to be really mindful of that when I got laid off, to not just find myself in this space of, I'm not good at what I do. I don't have skills or talent or anything anyone's looking for. And that's simply not true. And it's not true for you. But that negative self-talk can really kick in when something like this happens. Anytime you feel like you have been rejected, this kind of negative self-talk comes up. The other thing that really rears its ugly head is all these projections of what's going to happen to you, which aren't true. They're just your mind creating various scenarios. And oftentimes, at least in the first stages of being laid off or any situation that can make you feel like you are rejected, can make you feel like you're not valid, you're not enough, you don't have meaning, no one cares about you, you're not valuable, you're not worthy. And all this negative self-talk comes rushing in. And then you create these scenarios about yourself and the future that aren't true. They're just your mind creating these scenarios about your future. Like I always go to, no one's going to hire somebody who has a hand tattoo. And how am I going to cover up? I have one on the back of my neck right here. And you can see it when my hair is short, like now. You can see it. How am I going to cover that up? Should I cover up my hand tattoo? Oh, I'm older. Who's going to hire me? I need to somehow project that I am younger than I am. And I start creating this whole persona that isn't me. It just isn't me. But I start creating it because I'm worried that my presentation won't be valid to someone else and they will make assumptions and judgments about me, which is one of the main things I really struggle with is people judging me. I have really had to do so much work on this crazy mind I go to where I feel like everyone is judging me on something or for everything. For what my hair looks like, for how old I am, for what I wore today, for the tattoos I have, for my size, for the fact that I'm not necessarily conforming all the time. And that's been really hard. And I know if you are struggling with being laid off or rejected in some way or feelings of rejection, I want to say being laid off is not rejection. Being laid off is not rejection. But certainly you can feel that way. It's really hard to deal with feeling rejected. And I want you to know that it's a conscious choice in your mind to decide what negative self-talk you're letting in. Well, when I say conscious, I mean somewhere inside you, conscious or subconscious, you're deciding to allow this negative self-talk to come in. You're also deciding that you are going to define the layoff as rejection or that you're not worthy or valued. And you can retell that story to yourself differently. You can keep all the facts. So you were laid off. So now you have to look for another job. So you have worries about that. You can acknowledge all of that, but you can retell the story of what happened in a different way. The company's budget wouldn't allow for payroll anymore. Maybe this is the universe's way of forcing me to move on. Maybe this isn't a door closing, but a door opening. And then start asking yourself, what can I gain with this unexpected change? What can you gain? For me, I decided I could gain a work environment that is maybe more conducive to my beliefs, or maybe I can expand upon the things I already do and grow that into a business instead of a side gig like it is now. Maybe this is a moment for me to really promote my book and the other things that I'm doing. And maybe this is a time to network with folks that I wouldn't necessarily network with because I was employed. And I know it's hard. And let's acknowledge that. Being laid off is hard. It's so hard on you emotionally and mentally and even physically. Honestly, it's crushing. It's crushing. Let's acknowledge it. It's crushing. Even if you see it coming, it's such an incredible blow. It's really hard not to immediately go to that negative self-talk, to immediately go to all the reasons why you aren't valid, are worthy, are valuable. It's so easy to fall into panic and despair. It's so easy to let your ideas about what your future will be to be doomsday and the worst case scenarios that could possibly happen to you. Yes. I did all of that in October. And just the extreme embarrassment of being rejected in some way, feeling like you're rejected in some way. I keep saying being rejected, but then say being laid off is not rejected, but it definitely feels that way. So I'm acknowledging the feelings around being laid off, feeling rejected, feeling like you're not valuable. It's so hard and embarrassing and challenging. And it takes you back to those moments in your childhood when you felt like you didn't measure up, when you felt like you let somebody down, when you felt like people aren't going to be proud of you, when you did things you aren't proud of. It takes you back there, even though that's not what's happening right now. But you can't help it because embarrassment is part of this whole thing. And I say this just as a reflection on what I'm going through. I'm embarrassed. I'm horrified. I'm frightened. I'm worried. I'm reevaluating every great thing that I did in the work world and all the knowledge that I have. I am feeling like maybe I don't have that. Maybe I'm not an expert. Maybe I don't know enough. All those things. All those things are just really coming at you. And it's a battle, right? It's a battle with yourself every day. Every day. It's a battle. I encourage you to try to recognize that when that's happening. You can retell this story of being laid off. It does not have to be that you are a failure or that you were rejected or that you were not good enough or that you were not valuable enough or that you can't get another job. That does not have to be the narrative of this being laid off. You can stick with the facts of what happened, but retell the story. Is there a way you could retell your story about being laid off? Because as soon as it happened, the narrative for me was, I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy. I'm not valuable. And that led into my job search. I'm not valuable enough for the money that I make. I should just be happy to get any job at all, anywhere. And it doesn't matter if it can't support me. Because that's another thing we're finding out in the job market as you start looking. There's a lot of jobs out there in your field that are so underfunded. They're offering wages that are not even livable, but their expectations are that you know all this stuff and have all this knowledge and years and degrees and all these kinds of things. And that can reinforce these feelings of, see, I'm not valuable. What I do is totally devalued, and I can only get these jobs that pay half or less of what I would expect at this point in my career. There's just so many things about being laid off and the job search that can really bring you down and make you feel like you're not good enough in some way. And that's simply not true. That's simply not true. It's just that this process and how we've decided to go about interviewing people and giving people jobs has morphed into an experience that makes you feel lesser than, and you aren't lesser than. This is a hard time in our history collectively. This is a hard time for everybody being laid off and everybody job hunting. It's incredibly, incredibly hard and demeaning and devaluing and challenging and frightening and scary. And once you're laid off, you feel like any job you ever get, there's no security in it. Your security's been ripped out from under you. It's hard to get that back, but you need to be able to feel good about your skills and good about what you do and good about who you are and good about your future as you go into this phase of looking for jobs, because that is the energy you need to put out there in the world as you're job hunting. Not that energy of, I'm not good enough, desperation to be hired. What are all the things that are wrong with you? Because it will affect your performance in a job interview. It will really be obvious. If you pay attention to people's energy, walk around today, and even if you don't talk to anybody, just pay attention to people's energy. What are they doing? Can you feel their energy? Do you feel people who are mad, who are really aggressive, who are self important, who are more timid? Can you feel their energy? You can. And you don't want to project that in a job interview. I suggest you keep an emotion journal. And I actually did a podcast on this, which I was going to use for this week, but I'm going to do it next week. But let's just say, write down what your feelings are about this whole laid off business. Write it down. Write it down how you feel about it. What happened? What are your thoughts about it? And explore that. And keep a journal as you move through. As you're looking for jobs, how does that make you feel? As you apply for jobs and get ghosted, how do you feel? As you apply for jobs and get a call and go to 5 interviews only to be turned away. What are your feelings through all of this experience? And how can you tell the story of what's happening in a different way so that it's not self-defeating? And what lessons can you learn and take away? I know it's really, really hard. And you're going to have days where you just feel like nothing's ever going to change. But it is going to change. I also think it's important for you to write down what your hopes are in this new job search. What do you want? What are your intentions? What are your goals? What are your dreams for this new job experience? Make it all positive. Create this space that you can go to that's a bit positive, because being laid off and looking for work can have a lot of negative qualities to it. It's hard to wake up and be positive. You want to just go ranting everywhere all the time. And if you need to rant, figure out a way to do that. And a journal is a good way to rant because you can do it uncensored. You don't have to censor your rant for other people. It can really help you. When I journal, I've said this before, but you can also record yourself. Go on a walk somewhere where people won't see you talking to yourself, or wherever, and record your rant to yourself where you can be uncensored. Work on that. Like, what are the parts of it that you're really infuriated by? And why? Can you trace it back to a childhood memory? A lot of the challenges I'm facing with being laid off have to do with letting my parents down at various times during my childhood and young adulthood. I always wanted their approval. It was hard to feel like I had it a lot of the times. And a lot of these feelings just really stem back to that. I was also in a very abusive relationship, and a lot of this brings up the abusive relationship again. Like that feeling like you can't get out of it. You're nothing, you're nobody. Nobody cares about you. Nobody thinks anything you have to say is valid. You have no skills. You're only remotely where you are because of other people have gotten you there. And now look, you're alone. This is really horrible programming that happens during those types of toxic relationships that can come back up when a life event like being laid off, anything that has those same feelings of being cast out in some way. So it's a moment to explore. Why do you feel that way? Can you trace it back to moments in your past? Can you retell those moments in the past to yourself? For a long time, I felt like I was the idiot. Like, how did I get in this abusive relationship? How did I stay in it for a decade? How did all this happen? I mean, it's just so lame. I'm just so stupid and incapable of having a functional life because I allowed 10 years of my life to be in this toxic relationship that was hurting me and hurting other people that I loved. And I cast all the people I love aside for this relationship. And even though I work really hard to get out of that space, when something like being laid off happens to you, you find yourself right back there again. And then you feel bad that all this work you did, like get away from that, was for naught because now you're right back in the same spot. But that's not true. Now you recognize it. You can trace it back to that story. I can retell the story to myself, right? It doesn't have to be, I'm dumb. There's a moment where you can heal some of the parts of the past and you can retell your current story. And I think one of the biggest things during this that I have just started tapping into is being able to support other people in this process and have other people support you in this process. That's a new thing that I've never experienced in all my years of job hunting, is that we can come together as people who are all doing the same thing. We're all looking for work. The same things have happened to us. We can support each other. We can hear each other's rants. We can lift each other up. We can help each other with our resumes and cover letters. You can find people everywhere who are in the same boat as you. Your friends, your family, your personal groups, where you go during the day, all have people who are in the same place you are. Your old coworkers, LinkedIn, social media of all kinds. There's so many ways to find people you can connect with so that you don't have to walk down this road by yourself. You can certainly connect with me if you feel like you need to talk about this, because I too am walking down this same road with you. So I want you to know to be good to yourself. Rant when you need to, and cry, feel sad, feel all the things you feel when something ends. Shame, sorrow, despair, anger, hopelessness, fear, despair. But then turn the space of hopefulness, of positivity, of control, of power. It's going to go back and forth. Some days are better than others. But we're in this together. So know that I love you and I support you. And you can do this. You can do this. There is a door that's opening for you, my friend. Take care.